the rocket-firing Boba Fett. Probably the most famous unreleased action figure ever. Now, I know you're going to tell me your cousin's uncle's nephew works at Kenner and he brought you home a shoebox full of them and you passed them out around the neighborhood and every kid had them, but they all lost them and no one's ever seen them since then. Or you went into a Kmart and you found one on the shelf, but you didn't. None got released. None even got past the product's safety test that they do, which all figures have to get approved by safety from Kenner before they could even get carded. But you seem like these come up for auction at least once a year lately. And I thought, how many are they? Is this thing rare? I mean, we were told in the early 90s there were only a handful of them, and none of them ever got colored. And then we found out a few of them did get painted and they had the color to them. So how many are they out there? Are we talking a handful? Are we talking 50? Are we talking hundreds? Well, there's no official number of how many of these prototypes, one, got made, how many survived and got outside of Kenner, kept by Kenner employees, mostly the toy designers. Even the toy designers can't give you an official number. I mean, you had a couple of different toy designers working on it. Some of them went back to rework on the spring-loaded mechanism. So there was no official number. But it seems we got a rough estimate of how many of these are made. Not exactly how many are out there in the collector's market or didn't get lost over time. It seems to be about 100. That seems to be, whenever you talk to any former Kenner employees, any collectors that really know Star Wars vintage collecting, that's really into the high inside of it, most of them all put the count to be around 100 of these prototypes made, with very few of them actually being painted. And none of them, well, I was going to say none of them got carded, but one of them did get carded, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, out of the rocket-firing Boba Fett, as you know, there's two different ones. There's an L slot and a J slot. This is kind of just shows you how the trigger button will lock in. The L, you just had to push it over to fire the rocket. The J, you had to pull down, then over to shoot the rocket out. And it fits safety concerns better, but still not enough to get the figure released. It seems out of the L slot, there was more of them made. About 80 of them is what we can get a count of, 80 of them. As for the J slot, about 19. So out of those two, the J slot is rare. Now, most of these are all blue, hadn't been painted yet, but there was at least one found with yellow legs. Now, out of all the ones that we know of, not all of them have the rocket. You got to think this is a little small rocket, and it would fall out easy. And we're talking the 1979. People really didn't keep up with this stuff. They didn't think it was going to be worth as much as it is today. So a lot of the rockets were lost. And there were two different rockets. The L-shaped rocket for the Boba Fett, it had 4 ribs on the side of it. As for the J slot, it would have 8 ribs for your protection, I guess. Another thing these Boba Fetts don't have is a copyright date. Again, it didn't get that far into production, so there's no copyright date on these figures. Well, I said they were all loose, all but one. One was carded and shown off at the 1979 Toy Fair. This was thought to be lost forever, but then it seemed to turn up on eBay somewhere around 2006 and would pop up now and then with a guy asking an outrageous price for it and never did sell. It kind of disappeared. No one ever really saw it for a couple years, and then it turned up on the television show Pawn Stars. Well, the guy wanted a huge amount for it. I think he wanted like $1 million for it or something. I don't remember exactly. I do know that Rick, the owner of the pawn shop, offered him $100,000 for it, and he laughed at him and turned him down. Now, when that one aired on the History Channel, that same night, that same figure showed up on eBay. And sadly, I searched around. I could find no history if it sold or if it did what it sold for or anything. It kind of disappeared since then. Now, over the years, some of these rocket-firing Boba Fetts have sold. In the 90s, it wasn't that uncommon to see them for sale in Toy Shop magazine. Sure, you saw a lot of fake ones in Toy Shop magazine. Some would say customs, some would try to sell it off as real. And they wanted hundreds of dollars for it, like $400 to $600. And if you were collecting Star Wars toys in the 90s, you were like, that's a lot of money for a Star Wars toy. But there was some official Kenner prototype rocket-firing Boba Fetts in Toy Shop magazine, and those usually sold for around $6,000 to $10,000. But let's look at more recent. July 2016, an L-shaped rocket-firing Boba Fett sold for $19.6 thousand. And then we jumped to March 2018, where an L-slot rocket-firing Boba Fett with an AFF grade of 90 hit eBay with an asking price of $185,000. It didn't sell for that, but it did sell for $145,000. And then April 2019, another L-slot Boba Fett showed up. This one didn't have the inside parts like the spring and things to make it work. And it sold for $95,000 on the Rebel Hideout Facebook group. And then that same year, July 2019, Hank's auction website sold an L-slot rocket-firing Boba Fett for $112,000. And then we have November 7th, 2019. Again, that same auction website sold a J-slot for $185,000. And we jump a year to March 2020, where the prop store website sold an L-slot rocket-firing Boba Fett for $87,000. Which is probably a little lower than expected. Now, I didn't see the condition of this figure, but that's lower than the ones previously were going for. And Hank's auction was back at it again, selling a rocket-firing Boba Fett. This time an L-slot for September the 24th, 2020. And it sold for $62,000. Looks like the price was dropping on these things. But then came June the 30th, 2021. Hanks had a graded L-slot rocket-firing Boba Fett, graded at an 85. It sold for $165,000. And then that takes us to this year, March 16th, 2022, where a J-slotted rocket-firing Boba Fett, graded at a 50, that's pretty low, graded at a 50, sold for $204,000. Let me say that again, $204,000. That's almost the price of a new Adidas. Now, these numbers I did round off, so you don't tell them in the comment section what they really sold for. Close enough. But that's a look at the rocket-firing Boba Fett and how many's out there. Again, we have no official number. Everyone says right around 100, so let's say a little less than 100, with about 80 of the L shots and about 19 of the J shots, and one on card that was shown at Toy Fair. So now when anyone tells you, you know that rocket-firing Boba Fett's really not that rare, I see it come up once a year for sale. Well, these are other collectors selling to other collectors usually. Just because you see one sell this year doesn't mean it's not the same one you saw last year. They're pretty rare to find. But if you got one around your house, you're not really sure what you want to do with it, and you don't want it just sitting in a drawer, you can send it to me to Junkman, and I'll put it back here. I do have some custom ones here, but it would be nice to have a real one, that's for sure. Now, I want to thank you for watching. You can go ahead now in the comment section and tell me how your uncle worked at Kenner and brought home a whole bunch of these, or how one time you went to Kmart and you saw them on a clearance rack. I hear it all the time, just like I hear,
Junkman, I swear I saw Revenge of the Jedi carded figures at Kmart back in the 80s.
No, you didn't see that either. Well, I want to thank you for watching. Thumbs up if you like my content. Subscribe to the channel. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.